أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما المؤمنون الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم وإذا تليت عليهم آياته زادتهم إيمانا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون الذين يقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون أولئك هم المؤمنون حقا لهم درجات عند ربهم ومغفرة ورزق كريم. The believers are only those who, when Allah is mentioned, feel a fear in their hearts, and when His verses, this Quran, are recited unto them, the verses increase their faith and they put their trust in their Lord alone. Who perform a salah and who spend out of what we have provided them. It is they who are the believers in truth. For them are grades of dignity with their Lord and forgiveness and a generous provision. These are the verses of 2, 3, and 4 from Surah Al-Anfal. As we see in the modern era, what's happening, especially with regards to what we see in Halaqa. And I wanted to highlight two of our heroes, our role models. So one was Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, who first conquered Jerusalem for us, and then Salahuddin Ayyubi. And I have these books, and hopefully I can inspire some of you guys to buy these books, and also read some of these books to your kids and ourselves. I've read Salahuddin Ayyubi a while back, but I was rereading it, and it's funny how much you forget about these amazing people. وَمَن نَصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. And help only comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know from the first battle of Islam, in the battle of Badr, 313 people went out against 1,000 people, of which, I forget the number, I think 8 people had weapons and everybody else was unarmed. I think 2 people had horses. So it's pretty much largely an unarmed group who were taking on 1,000 people. And it's the weapons and the armies and the horses didn't get the victory. It's Allah is the cause of the victory. Allah says in Surah Al-Anfal in verse 9, remember when you sought help of your Lord, He answered you, saying, I will help you with 1,000 of the angels, each behind the other, following one another in succession. The scholars mentioned 1,000 were the mushrikeen who came out, so Allah sent 1,000 angels. And Allah made it only as glad tidings, and that your hearts be at rest therewith. And there is no victory except from Allah. Verily, Allah is Aziz and Hakim. Remember when He covered you with a slumber as a security from Him, and He caused rain, water to descend on you from the sky, to clean you thereby, and to remove from you the rijs, whispering, evil suggestions, etc., shaitan, and to strengthen your hearts, and to make your feet firm thereby. Especially when it talks of feet firm thereby, I was blessed to be in Badr, and the sheikh that we were with, he showed us how the battle was laid out, and the Muslims had switched positions, and the Muslims were on a sandy part, and the mushrikeen, they were on the stable part, or the rocks. When it rained, the sand got wet and the ground became stronger, and the water made the stones slippery, so the horses started slipping and losing their ground. So within a small little thing, the rain, after the rain, they were much more relaxed. He made the enemy look smaller, so their courage didn't leave them. He made the enemy see the Muslims as small, so they got overconfident. And Shaitan was egging them on, telling them, I'm with you today. And if you read Surah Anfal, and I encourage all of us to go back and read it, when they come to when the battle lines are drawn, Shaitan goes, what I see you don't see, I am leaving. Because he saw the angels and he knew today was not going to be working for him. In this beautiful surah, Allah says, when you get into battle, remember Allah excessively, dhikran kathiran, and to be patient, to be zakirin and to be sabirin. And He also gives us the advice to be united and not to argue with each other, because our unity might leave. When we talk about unity, that's one of the biggest things that we need. And inshallah, I think it's getting better. There is no greater display of unity than when I look at the example of Hazrat Abu Ubaidah and Khalid bin Walid. When Khalid bin Walid had already been in the middle of his plans, and Hazrat Umar removed him as the commander, and Hazrat Abu Ubaidah didn't disrupt him. And when Khalid bin Walid asked him why not, he said, you were in the middle of your work, I didn't want to disrupt you. And I wanted to read the part which really the conversation, it was actually, it's quite impressive, because he doesn't just say why. I hope I find that page. Anyway, he just says, our affairs are not of this world. We're just brothers in religion. All we are seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That shows to us what our real priority is. We're seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are helping each other. And who's the commander and who's the foot soldier doesn't really matter. And when we think like that, the cause is much more important than the person or the title. And we must be together, and our cause is one. Ibn Khaldun says, the people who have a familial feeling and they're united in their cause. Familial feeling is somebody who, they're like a family, they're united, right? And they have a singular cause, right? When somebody's cause, they believe in that cause, everybody's united. The scholars say when the enemies of Islam left Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ was shown, and he was shown them as weak. And the scholars say because their size was big, the quantity was big, but their quality was weak. Because they knew these were good people. These were the best of their people. These were the best of people. These were truthful people. These were generous people. These were courageous people. These were people who they used to rely on. So they didn't necessarily want to fight. A lot of times it happens where somebody is working for the police or the army and they get sucked into these bad jobs. So they go along, but they don't really believe in it. Whereas somebody who really believes in what they're doing, and a group which really believes in their cause, they're much more united because they know why they're doing what they're doing. So this is a really great reminder for us to look at what our cause is. What are we doing here? As you and I enjoy this beautiful weather, a building which is intact, We're seeing our children healthy. We have clothes, we have food, we have sisters bringing amazing food. These are blessings upon blessings. There are people, they said, today I was reading something where it said it's going to take like 14 years if 100 trucks were working non-stop to clear the rubble in Gaza. So we have an amazing blessing. But what are we doing with this blessing? We are in a situation that we must do our parts to educate those around us. Allah has given all of us unique talents and unique skills, and we all have an unbelievable weapon, which is our intellect. Until we use our intellect to its full potential, the true use of intellect is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to disobey shaitan. When shaitan comes to us and implores us, go do this, the intellect comes in and says, no, your Lord said no. So recently I had a situation, so if say you tell your child to do something and they do something and they don't ask you about it, so you get really upset about it. And then I asked myself, have I ever asked Allah before I do things? And how would I look at situation if I asked Allah if what I'm about to do is right or wrong? The moment you put that lens on yourself, it's not easy. Everything that we do, if we ask, should I do this? Allah? Just the fact you ask, it will shake you. It really, like kind of, I felt that moment where I was like, I've never felt this before. Like, am I asking Allah before I'm doing things? We have this amazing blessing, amazing community. We have incredible talents. What are we doing to lift each other up? Look, nobody in this room would have guessed what's happening in the colleges around the country. Nobody. These are like entitled, some quote unquote rich kids, right? They're out protesting along with the Muslims, right? The people who came before us should take a lot of pride that they did something that Allah is giving them help through the ghaib. Because this is not normal. The parents are really like shaking. It's like, what's going on? Because I know I deal with a lot of people, right? And they tell me. And you know what's interesting is, for the first time, I'm seeing mainstream America telling me, please keep posting. They don't have the courage to post. Like I post on social media. So they'll be like, please keep posting. I can't post it because, I'm going to get doxxed at work. Jewish people are telling me that. I'm going to be, they're scared. So may Allah give us the courage and the hikmah and ikhlas. Because if we are doing things to be seen by people, eventually, if Allah reveals what shouldn't be seen of us, we are zero. No matter what we do, no matter our shortcomings, we have to constantly remind ourselves, we have this amazing blessing. Allah will never put us in a situation which we cannot manage. He knows we can only manage this. Gaza is for those people. They can manage that. We can't manage that. So we're this. They can manage that. So they're dealing with that. And whatever Allah's hikmah is, remember, you and I have to remember, Allah's deen is going to be ghalib over everything else. Whether we are part of it, whether we're not part of it. Because that's going to happen. When you look at Salahuddin Ayyubi, he had some incredible characteristics. You and I should take the himmah of aspiring for these characteristics and to teaching our kids these characteristics of courage, of a commitment to education, a commitment to sturdy lifestyle, a commitment to generosity and noble behavior, a commitment to be truthful, a commitment to be trustworthy. I'm originally from India. Many years ago, I used to know this guy. He was a Muslim guy who was in Bollywood. He used to do breakdancing. So, I used to also like him, but I was like, it's strange. But the guy had a earring and whatnot. But as I got on towards religion, I completely got disconnected. And somehow, he came on my social media feed and he had this poetry and it blew my mind. I listened to it 3 times and I'm not going to do as good a job, but I'm going to translate what he said. And he's saying, "Oh Muslims, they say the world is racing ahead, so let it race. You run back 1400 years ago, 1400 years, go back 1400 years. Take on the character of those people. The world will turn around and chase you." And it was said so beautifully. He said, the real matter is akhlaq. Why have you forgotten what's the real matter? You're chasing the world. It was really beautiful. When we prioritize character development and character education for ourselves and our kids, look, our leaders will come from us. As we are, will be our amirs. If we value education, the best of the educated amongst us will go up. If we value money, the richest amongst us will go up. If we value beauty, those who are beautiful, we want them ahead of us. If we are corrupt, the corrupt will go ahead. So you and I have to make the commitment that we aspire to the noble characteristics of Abu Ubaidah, Khalid bin Walid, Salahuddin Ayyubi. Do we even know what these people were like? This book is written by the Sheikh. It's a translation, but it's written by a Sheikh who lived with Salahuddin Ayyubi. And he talks, I just read the first few pages and I had to read it 2-3 times. It was just so beautiful. Let me see if I can read a page. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. And he talks about religiosity. I'll say something about his generosity. The chapter opens, some insist on his generosity. Our holy prophet Rasulullah ﷺ says, when the generous man stumbles, God takes him by the hand. He was known to be so generous. He was the king of Syria and Egypt. When he died, he left 47 dirhams and 1 gold coin. His kids got nothing. No, and not that he was not rich, huh? They said in one instance, in some place in Akar, I don't know how to say it, he had given out 10,000 horses. He conquered a place, somebody came and asked him for it, he gave it as a charity. When people would come, when he would give charity, if somebody came back in line twice, he never said, I already gave you. He would give again. His commitment to justice. He said one time a man petitioned him for some money. There was some dispute. But he had he was a little annoyed, but he said, I'm going to go in front of the judge. Imagine our modern day presidents, or especially in the Muslim world, like, how these tyrants are. So he goes in front of the judge and he says what the matter was. The matter was concluded in his favor. And the sheikh tells him, said, this man came, he had hoped for some mercy from you, although he was in the wrong. He said, he asked a guy come in and he gave him money and robes and everything and gave him expenses from where he came and to go back. He said the man would have been punished normally, but he went back, he gave him money and because he was looking for money. These are the kind of people we have that we need to embrace. It talks about his commitment to his prayer, which as, is an example. He was also Hafiz al-Quran. So let me read a little part of it about him. Salahuddin was very fond of hearing the Quran read, and he used to argue with the Imam. This man had to be the master of all knowledge connected with the text of the Quran, and to know the book by heart. When the prince passed the night in the alcove of his tent, so you saw a special part kept of his tent. At night he would go read and, do his ibadah. When he gave public audiences, he would have from 1 to 20 verses and sometimes more read by men accustomed to do so. One day he passed by a little boy who was reading the Quran very well at his father's side, and was so pleased that he had the boy called and gave him some of the food he set aside for his own special use, and also granted to him and his father part of the produce of a certain field. His heart was humble and full of compassion. Tears came readily into his eyes. When he was listening to the reading of the Quran, his heart melted and tears generally flowed down his cheeks. He was very fond of listening to the recital of traditions, hadith. When the narrator could trace each tradition that he related to its source, and when he was learned in such lore. If one of the doctors visited the court, the ulama, he would receive them personally and made those of his sons who happened to be present as well as Mamluks on duty listen to the traditions recited. He would order all those who were present to be seated during the narration as a sign of respect. If any of the doctors of traditional lore were such characters as who do not frequent the gates of sultans and are unwilling to present themselves in such places, Salahuddin would go himself to seek them out and listen to them. This shows the humility of the kind of person he is. He has a commitment to knowledge and spiritual affinity. And I'll end with this one. When you talk about وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ, I'll finish with this.
You have 10 minutes.
Yeah, we'll keep it quiet. Last one. One time when they were in Jerusalem, the Crusaders encircled them. And so he calls the meeting with his emirs to find out what's going on. What should we do? Having perfect trust in God, he looked upon him as his great support and turned ever to him. I will give an instance of this which I myself witnessed. The Franks, the Crusaders, had pitched their camp at Bet Nuba, a place situated about a day's journey from Jerusalem. The Sultan occupied the city. So he calls all these people and he says, what should we do? So they tell him, you should leave because you being in the city would imperil the empire. We will hold the city. But he knew they were not courageous enough to hold the city. And they would let it go. So he says he stays up all night talking to the sheikh about what the options are, what should we do, what should we do. So at night the sheikh tells him, go to sleep, get some rest, we'll figure out tomorrow. So it's the eve of Friday, Jummah night. When he used to pray tahajjud with them and then Fajr together, right before. So he goes into his room, he says he's doing his wudu. So he says, you haven't slept. He said, I know you haven't slept either. He says, because I could see you, from your tent. So he tells him, what should we do? So he says, at last I have an idea that I believe is a good one. Please God. What is it? He asked. I replied, support is from God. Turn to Him and trust in His goodness, and you will be delivered out of this affliction. And what shall we do? He inquired. I answered, today is Friday. Your Highness will perform a ceremonial ablution before going this afternoon to the Aqsa. You will say your prayers as usual in the holy place of the Prophet's night journey. You will charge a confidential servant to give alms in secret. Then you will say a prayer of 2 rak'ah after the adhan and before the iqamah. And whilst you remain prostrate, you will call upon God for help. We have a credible tradition on this subject. Your Highness will say within yourself, O God, all earthly means that I have employed for the defense of religion now fail me. There remains for me no resource but to seek support in Thee, to put myself in Your hand, and to trust myself to Your goodness. Upon You alone do I count. You are the best of guardians. Rest assured that God is too generous to reject your appeal. He did exactly as I advised, and I prayed by his side as usual. While he said the 2 rak'ah between adhan and iqamah, his body prostrate, I saw the tears falling onto his grizzling beard and then onto the prayer carpet, but I did not hear what he had said. Before we had reached the end of the day, a dispatch arrived in which Izzuddin Jurdik, who was then in command of the advance guard, informed us a great disturbance reigned amongst the Franks. That their men had this day mounted their horses, and then basically they suddenly got up and left. So Friday evening they moved back, Saturday they moved further, by Monday they had a whole disagreement between each other, between the king in England and the king of France. By Monday morning they were all gone. The problem was all fixed. So the power of dua has a big, big effect. So let us remind ourselves, true help is the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to remember Him, and to ask Him, and to try to be the mu'mineen in reality. And to seek for ikhlas in our deen. And to ask for the virtues of wisdom, of courage, of sincerity. And to aspire to do whatever that we have for the sake of the deen. Because we don't know how Allah will make use of us. All we have to do is submit to it. May Allah forgive what was said, if there was anything wrong. Thank you for your patience. May Allah accept our efforts. May Allah make us amongst the people of hikmah. May Allah make us the people of sincerity. May Allah grant us to aspire to the best of characters. May Allah grant us to have the ability to act upon the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا واغفر لنا إنك على كل شيء قدير ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار.